Section 57 of Reviews by Oscar Wilde. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Karen Savage. Reviews by Oscar Wilde. Edited by Robert Ross. Section 57. Sir Charles Bowen's Virgil. Pall Mall Gazette, November 30th, 1887. Sir Charles Bowen's translation of the Eclogues and the first 6 books of the Aeneid is hardly the work of a poet, but it is a very charming version for all that, combining as it does the fine loyalty and learning of a scholar with the graceful style of a man of letters, 2 essential qualifications for anyone who would render in English verse the picturesque pastorals of Italian provincial life, or the stately and polished epic of imperial Rome. Dryden was a true poet, but for some reason or other he failed to catch the real Virgilian spirit. His own qualities became defects when he accepted the task of translator. He is too robust, too manly, too strong; he misses Virgil's strange and subtle sweetness, and has but little of his exquisite melody. Professor Conington, on the other hand, was an admirable and painstaking scholar, but he was so entirely devoid of literary tact and artistic insight that he thought that the majesty of Virgil could be rendered in the jingling manner of Marmion, and though there is certainly far more of the medieval knight than of the moss trooper about Aeneas, even Mr. Morris's version is not by any means perfect. Compared with Professor Conington's bad ballad, it is of course as gold to brass. Considered simply as a poem, it has noble and enduring qualities of beauty, music, and strength, but it hardly conveys to us the sense that the Aeneid is the literary epic of a literary age. There is more of Homer in it than of Virgil, and the ordinary reader would hardly realize from the flow and spirit of its swinging lines that Virgil was a self-conscious artist, the laureate of a cultured court. The Aeneid bears almost the same relation to the Iliad that the Idylls of the King do to the old Celtic romances of Arthur. Like them, it is full of felicitous modernisms, of exquisite literary echoes, and of delicate and delightful pictures. As Lord Tennyson loves England, so did Virgil love Rome. The pageants of history and the purple of empire are equally dear to both poets, but neither of them has the grand simplicity or the large humanity of the early singers, and, as a hero, Aeneas is no less a failure than Arthur. Sir Charles Bowen's version hardly gives us this peculiar literary quality of Virgil's verse, and now and then it reminds us, by some awkward inversion, of the fact that it is a translation. Still, on the whole, it is extremely pleasant to read, and if it does not absolutely mirror Virgil, it at least brings us many charming memories of him. The metre Sir Charles Bowen has selected is a form of English hexameter, with the final dissyllable shortened into a foot of a single syllable only. It is, of course, accentual, not quantitative, and though it misses that element of sustained strength which is given by the dissyllabic ending of the Latin verse, and has consequently a tendency to fall into couplets, the increased facility of rhyming gained by the change is of no small value. To any English metre that aims at swiftness of movement, rhyme seems to be an absolute essential, and there are not enough double rhymes in our language to admit of the retention of this final dissyllabic foot. As an example of Sir Charles Bowen's method, we would take his rendering of the famous passage in the 5th Eclogue on the death of Daphnis. All of the nymphs went weeping for Daphnis cruelly slain. Ye were witnesses, hazels and river waves, of the pain, when to her son's sad body the mother clave with a cry, calling the great gods cruel, and cruel the stars of the sky. None upon those dark days their pastured oxen did lead Daphnis to drink of the cold clear rivulet, never a steed tasted the flowing waters, or cropped one blade of the mead. Over thy grave how the lions of Carthage roared in despair, Daphnis, the echoes of mountain wild and of forest declare. Daphnis was first who taught us to guide with a chariot rein far Armenia's tigers, the chorus of Iacchus to train, led us with foliage waving the pliant spear to entwine. As to the tree her vine is a glory, her grapes to the vine. Bull to the horned herd, and corn to a fruitful plain, thou to thine own wert beauty. And since fate robbed us of thee, Pallas herself and Apollo are gone from meadow and lea. Calling the great gods cruel, and cruel the stars of the sky, is a very felicitous rendering of atque Deus atque astra vocat crudelia mater, and so is thou to thine own wert beauty for tu decus omni tuis. This passage, too, from the 4th book of the Aeneid is good. Now was the night. Tired limbs upon earth were folded to sleep. Silent the forests and fierce sea waves. In the firmament deep midway rolled heaven's stars. No sound on the meadows stirred. Every beast of the field, each bright-hued feathery bird, haunting the limpid lakes, or the tangled briery glade, under the silent night in sleep were peacefully laid. All but the grieving queen. She yields her never to rest, takes not the quiet night to her eyelids or wearied breast. And this, from the 6th book, is worth quoting. Never again such hopes shall a youth of the lineage of Troy rouse in his great forefathers of Latium. Never a boy nobler pride shall inspire in the ancient Romulus land. Ah, for his filial love, for his old world faith, for his hand matchless in battle! Unharmed what foemen had offered to stand forth in his path, when charging on foot for the enemy's ranks, or when plunging the spur in his foam-flecked courser's flanks. Child of a nation's sorrow, if thou canst baffle the fates' bitter decrees, and break for a while their barrier gates, thine to become Marcellus, I pray thee bring me anon handfuls of lilies, that I bright flowers may strew on my son, heap on the shade of the boy unborn these gifts at the least, doing the dead, though vainly, the last sad service. He ceased. Thine to become Marcellus has hardly the simple pathos of tu Marcellus eris, but child of a nation's sorrow is a graceful rendering of heu miserande puer. Indeed, there is a great deal of feeling in the whole translation, and the tendency of the metre to run into couplets, of which we have spoken before, is corrected to a certain degree in the passage quoted above from the Eclogues by the occasional use of the triplet, as elsewhere, by the introduction of alternate, not successive, rhymes. Sir Charles Bowen is to be congratulated on the success of his version. It has both style and fidelity to recommend it. The metre he has chosen seems to us more suited to the sustained majesty of the Aeneid than it is to the pastoral note of the Eclogues. It can bring us something of the strength of the lyre, but has hardly caught the sweetness of the pipe. Still, it is in many points a very charming translation, and we gladly welcome it as a most valuable addition to the literature of echoes. Virgil in English verse. Eclogues and Aeneid. 1 through 6. By the Right Honourable Sir Charles Bowen, one of Her Majesty's Lords Justices of Appeal. John Murray. End of Section 57. Sir Charles Bowen's Virgil.